Yo, 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 what is going on, COD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are going to be reviewing the most recent update that will be coming out, which is 1.0.19, the Grand Jubilee. We're going to be reviewing these patch notes as we usually do. We'll go top down. I'll give you my thoughts on some as we go through. I haven't actually even read these yet, so I always try to do this, right? Because I like to try and get kind of a raw reaction instead of reading through it and then recording the video. So here we go. Let's see what they have in store for us today. Number one, colorful garden party holiday event. I like how they're coming out with some new titles now for the headers, if anyone's been noticing that. 8 days of events. Join in on the fun, celebrate with the children of the Abbey. Lucky Ball Machine. Join the event, earn lucky coins, and get rewards in the Lucky Ball Machine. Okay, so potentially free rewards. Can't necessarily be mad at that. Number two, Great Heights, or 1-2. Great Heights. We have survive perilous trials and ascend to the peak to win a new city theme. Okay. And then we have 1-3, everything must go. An array of discounts, surprises, and exceptional bargains await you. Okay, so this is going to be kind of a market type thing, possibly. 1-4, Veil Society Quiz. Put your knowledge to the test and win rewards prepared by Veln. Okay, so this is their take on the, I'm forgetting what the rock one is called, for where they have the quiz and they do that all the time. Or they do that on a routine basis, and it's basically kind of you playing Jeopardy, right? To try and win as many prizes or / resources as you can. And then we have 1-5, Celestial Battlegrounds. Push your limits and showcase your might. Defeat enemies as quickly as you can. Okay. I guess it's just additional rewards for doing it in that case when it comes up. 1-6, Bounty Hunt. Fight bravely to reclaim the Merchants Guild's lost goods. For event times, check the event calendar. Okay. So this is going to be a bounty hunt. I wonder if that'll be an individual thing, or because it mentions merchants guilds, will that be something maybe you could do with your alliance members? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Okay. So I guess just a bunch of more events, more chances to win some free rewards. If that's the case, can't be mad at it. I'd say that's good. Number two, exciting season stories. 2-1. The Dwarven Civil War is ended, but peace remains out of reach. A dark plot is about to be uncovered. Season stories of the Mountain Skies. Doors are available soon. See what destiny has in store for the land of Balorun in this new era. Okay, and then number 1-2. Season 2, the Aspect outros to a close. The event Covenantal offerings will begin once the Auguste Zone progresses to a certain point. Players in Season 2 can contribute resources to rebuild the Gate of Promises. Okay, this is interesting, right? This is kind of it's not an EOTC thing, right, in Rock, which is Eve of the Crusade. It's basically like a couple day prep events, but it's a 3-stage prep event before you go into KVK. But then once you get into KVK, at least after the first season or two, or maybe all the seasons if it's still continuing that way, where you'll have specific objectives, right, goals that you can do in the beginning of the season. And one of those is to basically donate resources to rebuild, I think it's some type of fortress, or some grand fortress from what I can remember. So it's interesting they're kind of doing something like that. That was the first thing that came to mind. Okay, so, alrighty. Hey man, if you get you some extra free rewards, why not? Number 3, an even richer combat experience. 3-1, improved the combat behavior. This could be a big one, a big update too. Improved the combat behavior of rallied armies. When rallied armies are intercepted or attacked while marching, they will attack enemies within range, but will not pursue them. Okay. They will attack enemies. I mean, to be fair, this makes sense to me, right? And again, let me preface this. It makes sense from two different positions. One position is that if a rallied army on the field is marching to something and they get attacked, they're not just going to keep marching, right? They're probably going to counterattack, or they will attack whoever is attacking them back, right? They'll defend themselves, in short. And then I think the other part is that I guess then you kind of have to look at it from this fence position, which is that, well, if you're on the side of the fence where it doesn't make a lot of sense to you, or you just don't find it rational or logical that a rallied army is getting attacked for free and there's just free damage being done on it. Let's say the rally is a decent ways away and maybe it's an even fight, right? Maybe you guys both have units out on the field, but they still launch the rally anyways. I mean, typically if you're launching the rally from in the typical sense, right? If it's being done on a city or if it's being done on a pass, the idea is that you have control of the area and you're rallying the army from a safe distance. Unless you're trying to rally the army just to push a bunch of units, right? You're going to like cancel it or disperse it right before it hits or a little bit before it hits, right? Where maybe you're going to try and flank your opponents from the back. We've seen a couple instances of that happening too as well, out on the battlefield in some kingdoms, right? As a tactic or a kind of on-field strategy. So, but yeah, I'm kind of I guess I fall a little bit more on the side of I like the idea of being able to attack the rallied army, but the rallied army can still defend itself. So you're not just kind of attacking it for free, right? So I'm actually okay with this. Obviously, would love to hear your guys' thoughts. 3-2, improved the appearance of certain unit types. Legions of different levels are now clearly distinguishable. Improved unit types include Vestals 1, 2, and 5. Swordsmans 1, 2, 5, Knights 1, Knights 2, 5, Ballistas 1, 2, 4, 5. Celestials 4, 5. Okay, so this is something that it's funny that this got added in, because this was something that we were talking about. Gosh, who was it? It was me, Abda. Oh my gosh, there was a bunch of people in this call on the CoD Discord on a Friday, and if you're watching, you guys have to let me remember the names because it's been a minute. So, but this is one of the things we were talking about actually, and it made a lot of sense. Someone else I think brought the point up about how if you look at the current unit types right now, you'll notice that as you go through them, they look very much the same. And it was about, their argument was that you can't tell who's like a T5 player because the T4 and the T5 troops are the same. So it makes it very difficult to, if like, let's say you want to focus on a T4, you want to focus on a T5, or who's hitting you, maybe you need to reposition or defend or withdraw, right? It impacts strategic decisions or tactical decisions on the field, and just in this one sense. And as they were explaining this, and I was thinking about it myself, it makes sense, right? As for you to have a different visual aid per each tier. This is just kind of how I always thought it was in my head. I just never really looked at it too closely. But this is something I do agree with, and I like this change, actually. This is one of those things where this is a big, some people may think this is small, but this is actually a big quality of life update or feature update. And I like this because this really shows to me that, because from the developer standpoint, they might just think, well, this doesn't really matter, right? But this is such a big win, I think, for the community, because it's so much more than them just updating this. It's them listening to something that however many people advocated for, and they understood why it was important to the community, hopefully. And then they went ahead and still did the change. So this is something that I really like, because I think it speaks to more developer community relations, which, in short, I'd love if they did something where they just pooled community members, kind of almost representatives of the community, and did kind of like a developer meet and greet or something like that, right? Maybe once a month or once a quarter. Once a month might be a lot, but once a quarter. Infinity Kingdom did this for a while. And I was one of the fortunate chosen people to go and have a chance to actually speak to the developers. It was for like an hour or 2 hours or something like that in a separate Discord where we were kind of texting back and forth. And I just thought it was a great experience just to share, some feedback, because oftentimes, I'm not going to get off on a tangent, promise. But the last thing I'll say is that oftentimes I feel that there can be moments in a game or at certain junctions where there is a disconnect between what the developers created and what their intent was for their original creation versus what that creation actually is turning or forming into now. And that's always going to be something that the community will have more of a pulse on if, and this is where the asterisk comes in, if the developers are not fully integrating themselves into the current landscape of the game in all of its facets to really understand the game's behavior. And this is outside of being from a developer standpoint, right? Or like a coding viewpoint or a theory viewpoint. So anyways, that's all I wanted to say there. Moving forward, people are like, damn, boss, just move on, bro. 3-3, updated beast spawn zones. After level 25, beasts are unlocked, they will appear in all spawn zones on the world map. Okay, that's cool. Totally down for that. 3-4, changed the ceasefire effect in the early season event, the Great Revival. The time period in which players cannot attack other players' legions' buildings has been increased. Also, okay, we're going to talk about this in a moment. Also, legions cannot intercept other legions while ceasefire is active. So they're, okay. I'm going to spend a minute on this. I'll probably make a separate video to talk about this, potentially, maybe more in depth. But this to me is, in my opinion, and I've spoken about this publicly as well, they're just going in the wrong direction with this. And I say that respectfully, right? And let me explain why, because I'm never just going to give you a subject title and then move on. Explanation is really needed here. So the biggest hurdle with this is that it's not solving for the root problem, or the root challenge, let's say. The root challenge is that they're trying to put a Band-Aid on something that you are never going to be able to solve this way, the way they're trying to approach it. Let me explain. You have to understand, why are they trying to put a ceasefire in, right? We have to look at what the root cause is. They're putting a Band-Aid, like the Band-Aid is step 10. We have to look at, where is step 1? How did we get here to 10, right? We have to look here. What the actual root hurdle is that they don't have dedicated starting Kingdom Zone 1 regions. And what I mean by that is, if you take a KVK map, and they do this in Rock, right, where if you look, you're going into your first few KVKs, and or depending on how many they do it, where they have where they basically, what they do is they say, your kingdom is going to start here, and it's only going to be your kingdom in this Zone 1 region. Then we're going to put another kingdom here, we'll put another kingdom here, and another kingdom here. When you do it that way, you're reducing the likelihood that your starting Zone 1 region is going to just be a rampant war zone, right? Or that people are going to be attacked left and right. They do not have that here in Call of Dragons. You could, and I'll give you the worst case scenario, because some of these have actually happened before, right? And I've covered this in some of my videos. You could arguably have, let's say you have 6 kingdoms going into a KVK, which again, some KVKs in Call of Dragons do have 6 kingdoms going in. You could have all 6 of those kingdoms start off in the same Zone 1 region. And then what? Well, what do you think is going to happen? Well, I don't know. But they're going to fight. There's a very high chance, let me say that, a very high chance they're going to fight. And if they do fight, you then are going to have a few things that will happen, right? You have to think about what's the aftermath of this. So either one, a lot of people are going to fight, and there's always going to be a portion of people, usually a more majority portion, which falls kind of more onto the free-to-play and the low-spend range of players, who just don't really want to fight that early on, right? Or maybe they think they want to fight, but then once the fighting starts and they realize how far they're getting put behind on their development track, because bear in mind, high mid spenders are probably already Castle 25. They probably already have all their buildings maxed, and they're probably close to T5. They're either already T5, all T5, or they're close to getting all T5, right? If you're kind of in that high to mid spend range. And so because of that, your resource income, you have to look at this from multiple angles. It's not just one angle. You have to understand how connected this issue really is. And we talked about this in the Wahid 1 interview that I did with her, which was absolutely fantastic. It was such a pleasure talking to her. Is that you have to understand that you have a hard cap on the amount of resource income you have coming in. Right? Even if you're max VIP, you're max level, you got all your legions that are maxed XP level, etc. Right? You've doubled up on all the best gathering. You've doubled up on the gathering talents, etc. You still have a hard cap on how much RSS income you can gather per day, and this is outside of spending, of course. Then you have to look at it, and again, we're looking at this from the low spend free to play for this aspect. Then you have to look at it versus the people who are already max tech, and they're probably spending on resources to a degree outside of whatever they may gather. So because of this, of those free to play low spend that are having to fight or getting attacked or they're getting rallied at their cities, they're delaying their development of getting to that ideal point where they would be more viable or more contributive, are able to contribute more in fights, because they then have to now spend resources on not only healing but still building and research, right? So they have more outgoing resource streams that they have to spend their resources on, versus those who are high mid spenders, where the only thing they're spending resources on is healing and training troops, right? So they have less outgoing resource streams, which is why they can be a little bit more sustainable, or just a lot more sustainable in fights, outside of obviously the spending portion. So you have to look at, then we go back, let's full circle this. So we go back to the ceasefire being increased. The only way that you are going to have the highest percentage chance, if not a guarantee in a lot of cases, is if you you'd have to basically have dedicated Kingdom Zone 1 regions. You'd have to say, this region is where this kingdom is going, this Zone 1 region is where this kingdom is going. That's how you'd have to do it. Now, you can do that a couple ways. You can do a random assortment. You can do some type of prep event, like an EOTC, that they do in Rock, where it's basically the kingdoms competing against other kingdoms, where they have to do certain things, right? Which also is a way to kind of gauge activity. And then whoever places at the highest, maybe they get first choice. They get to pick where they want to go, right? And then you have the number 2 gets to pick where they want to go. That would be pretty cool. There's creative ways that you can integrate and work this in. But the challenge right now is that you have to look at it from the worst case scenario, and them just increasing the ceasefire effect, and then also trying to do it, right? Basically what they're saying is they want you to play no rush, right? And this is something that they basically want everyone to have invincibility for a period of time. But the challenge then becomes, is then you have to kind of look at, well, what is this doing? So they're going to increase this. However, they didn't say how long they're going to increase it for, right? I think right now it's 2 days. So maybe they're going to increase it to 3, 4, or 5 days. We don't know. But the one thing that you still can do is you can still outbuild other people, right? So you're kind of playing Jake the Snake out there, essentially, where you're looking to outbuild your other alliances that are there, even if you go to the same area. So you could arguably box people in by the time that, not only could you box people in, but you could also send your legions out there and stop people from building if you put enough legions out in the field. Right? You could just crowd. We've seen this before, where alliances have crowded specific areas, blocking their other alliances from placing flags. Right now, I don't know if they're going to fix this, or maybe if it already has been fixed, but this is something we've seen before. And then you can also have an alliance that outbuilds another alliance, and then they just kind of box them in, right? Because they're outbuilding them, so they can kind of block them off and form a wall with their flags. These are things that they can do. And these are things that you are probably almost going to be impossible to solve unless you put some type of boundary line that's separating the Zone 1 regions, right? Where it's like, you take this portion, that these take, it would be a lot to do. That's why, in my opinion, it's just so much easier if they said, hey, we're just going to go ahead and come out with dedicated Zone 1 regions. And regardless of how you feel about that, you have to understand why it is so impactful doing it the way it is now, in a negative way. And that's not against the developers, it's just understanding what's actually happening in the game, and the fact that you're still having a lot of these fights. And the fact is that if these fights were not happening, they wouldn't be making a change like this. Okay, let's move on. Number 4, a smoother route to prosperity. Since war pets were added to the game, we've received plenty of passionate and proactive feedback from players. In response, we've made a number of improvements to the system. Improved war pet regeneration. War pets are now guaranteed to be either epic or legendary after a certain number of regenerations. This number will be displayed on the regeneration page. A pop-up will appear to confirm your choice when you choose to regenerate after receiving an epic or legendary war pet, so you can avoid accidentally losing them. That sounds nice. I didn't. It's funny because I may still do a video on this, but that was one of the, I think, pieces of feedback that people were hearing, is that they were losing some of those, and that just seemed awful in probably the shortest way to explain that. Number 2, which is a 4-2, improved merit store. A new regeneration potion item will be added to the merit store every day, and a new war pet skill card will be added every week. The daily and weekly merits store will offer more valuable items and rarer war pet skill cards as the Augur Stone progresses. Okay, so a nice way to kind of work more in, and also at the same time promote more fighting. I see what you're doing. Updated crystal store. The items on sale, 4-3. The items on sale at the crystal store have been updated. All items apart from legendary hero tokens have been changed into large quantities of valuable 3-star war pet skill cards. Okay, that actually doesn't sound bad. I know I was talking to some, I know I was reading the Warpets chat on the Discord, and some people were saying that I guess it was either the 3-star Warpet skill cards or something else, but they were mentioning 3-star, how it was harder to find those. I think we're seeing some 2-stars, but just not as many 3-stars. So if this is one of those areas that helps improve that, okay, seems nice. Then we get to 4-4, improved icons for Warped talent skills. Okay, so quality of life here. 4-5, improved scout reports. Scout reports now show the artifacts and Warpeds equipped by heroes and enemy legions. Okay, so just kind of updating, but again, quality of life. Then we get to 4-6. Improved garrison hero information. Warpeds equipped by garrison heroes are now shown on the garrison screen. Okay. 4-7, improved Warpeds information. Sources of regeneration potions are now shown on the regeneration screen. Animation effects are now displayed on the skill screen when your Warped learns a new skill. The Warped training screen now shows your Warped's calculated attributes. The Warped enclosure expansion screen now shows the items you currently have and how many you acquire. Okay, so it seems like a little bit more quality of life, which again, I guess you can't necessarily be mad at. Would love to know some of your guys' thoughts here on Warpeds, along with what do you feel are and have been the most impactful or kind of challenging areas of Warpeds? Let me know in the comments. Then we get to number 5. Okay, we're getting close to the end here. More enjoyable events. Adjusted Dragon Trail race rankings and rewards. Only players who have completed event quests will be displayed in the rankings and receive rewards. 5-2, new custom mode for Lucky Spin and Strongest Lords event. You can now choose the hero you want as the reward for these events. This mode is only enabled at the end of the season. See event details for opening times. Okay, I mean, to be fair, that's not bad. Kind of almost reminds me of, what's that event in Rock? It's called like the King's Card or something like that. And it's basically where you play like a match pairing game, but you get to choose the hero, like the legendary hero out of all of them, and it's something that free to play can actually participate in. So I kind of like this. If it really is going to be where, hey, you can choose anyone or any legendary or just any hero in general, then okay. Now let's get to what I feel are some of the interesting ones here when it comes to other improvements, right? So here we go. 6-1, improved recommendations for deploying gathering legions. You can now choose to prioritize transport units, which will recommend transport units, or prioritize your load capacity, which will recommend a legion with the highest possible load capacity. Okay, this is actually a little bit better. I like this because I think this is hopefully going to make it easier and a little bit quicker to get out your gathering troops in that case. Or we should say legions / marches. Number 2. Oh gosh, there we go. Okay, we're good. 6-2, community integration. You can now directly enter community pages via the notice board in your city. New messages from community pages will also be displayed on your notice board. Interesting. I wonder if they mentioned community pages such as like the forums or something else. It would have been nice if there was a little bit of an explanation there, unless I just have no idea what the community pages are. Okay, 6-3, optimized exploration experience. Now the expedition of scout between regions is no longer restricted by Argostone progress, but is influenced by mist dispelling progress. When the mist dispelling progress, interesting. When the mist dispelling progress in the current region where the Lord resides reaches 100%, it will allow scouts to travel to adjacent regions within the same level pass. Once the mist dispelling progress in all adjacent regions reaches 100%, exploration of further regions will continue to be available. When the mist dispelling progress in all regions within the same level pass reaches 100%, it'll unlock exploration of regions within the next level pass, and so on. Meanwhile, explorable regions on the world map will be displayed in a distinct color. This is, okay, this is intense. Basically what they're saying is that if you scout all of the Zone 1 regions to 100% in each, it'll open up Zone 2. And then once you scout all of the Zone 2 regions and get 100% in each, it opens up Zone 3. So it's not going to be dictated now or gated by Argostone progression. That, to me, is actually a big win and does make me a little excited. So, yeah, there is that. We're going to have to see how this one plays out, but I'm not mad at it. At least from maybe a content point for me and maybe others, is that, it allows for us to basically, if we want to grind out scouting fog or defogging, we can do that earlier than later, especially for the Zone 1 areas, right? If we want to watch a lot of the fights, or even just doing it for just kind of already having even zone 2 and zone 3s mapped out, so that way, like, if fights are happening the moment that those passes open in some areas, right, then you're able to kind of see those immediately. So I think that's actually a win. Now, I want to point out on the thing about fog. My view on fog, and I'm going to say this again, it's not that I don't like the defogging, but I will say, as an update note, when I talk about, or when I think about the current season in Season 2, compared to how they did in Season 1 Plus, right, where fog was kind of already distributed already, or defogged, you were able to watch fights immediately. It's very difficult for a content creator, and I'm sure others from the community that would like to go and watch fights in other kingdoms, to actually do that. You can't really do that now in Season 2 because of the fact that the fog is there. Now, sure, if you want to do it the hard grindy way, where you want to make a bunch of scouts in all the kingdoms, and then eventually, you go into each of those characters and you start defogging all over the place, right? Or, you end up running other types of programs, wink, wink. But the idea being is that it's a grind. It's a lot of effort. So to me, and I've mentioned this before, I'd love if they added in and just gave you two options. They just said, look, either option one is you can immediately defog the entire kingdom, right? You can immediately defog the entire kingdom, but you don't get any rewards from defogging, right? You don't get any of those rewards that you find on the map. Or option two is, and maybe you have to be over a certain castle level as an example, right? Maybe you got to be castle 16 or something or higher, whatever it may be. But then option two is you can keep the fog in place and then you get the rewards as you defog. That to me seems as though it could be a little bit better. And the reason I say you should probably put a castle level restriction there is because, for as much as I'd love for them to not have that, if I'm giving my personal vote on it, right? This is more of a want than a need. Because obviously I'd love to just go in with all my scout accounts and just immediately defog all the kingdoms so I could watch all the fights, right, and record fights too as well. It's very difficult to obviously do that in Season 2. However, if I'm prioritizing being objective, which I have to, is that it makes more sense for them to put some type of castle restriction on it so it shows that you actually play there, right? And, maybe it's 16 or it's higher than castle 16, whatever it may be. I think somewhere kind of between 16 and 20 is ideal, in my opinion. Anyways, let's move on. But I do like this, though, as a good change. Okay, let's look. PC improvements. Added a sound toggle for the opening animation. Okay. 7.2, improved chat. You can now right-click on a chat message to copy or report it, as well as clicking and holding with the left mouse button. Okay, quality of life. 7.3, improved mail. You can now write new messages in full screen. An autosave feature has also been added. Oh, nice. One of the things I'd love for them to talk about is the fighting. As far as the lag or improving, whether it's the lag or reducing load, improving latency, whatever it may be, right? I'd love if they just touched on something about that for the big fights, right? For the 100 versus 100, 200 versus 200, like the massive open field PvP. If it's something that they would touch on, because again, we've been talking about this now for the second update. We talked about this last update as well. And again, we're talking about it now. It is something that, again, as I mentioned, if I watch large fights on my phone or on a tablet versus on the PC client, I am noticing that that I'm getting better display rates, right? I'm not seeing a lot of lag or none at all. Latency seems fine. Ping seems fine when I've tested out. And I'm not seeing any type of flutters or delays or somebody that's skipping on my screen as an example. I'm not seeing any Hector El Grandes. I'm not seeing the animation damages for red or purple, right? If it's base DPS or artifact or the white counter type, like I'm seeing all of that still. But on the PC client, those things are more consistently going away and disappearing when there's a lot of stress, if there's a lot of players on the map compared to on a tablet or a mobile device. So something I'd love for them to address in the future. And then that is pretty much going to do it for us, right? Wow, we're almost at about 30 minutes here for this one. Okay. And then we have few that was a lot to handle. It was a lot to handle. As always, right? Remember, make sure you guys give your feedback. Right? You're going to receive rewards within 5 days, so make sure that you guys do that. With that in mind, maybe for future updates, I'll start giving my feedback while I do it live here, because everyone's like, boss, why are you telling us to give feedback? But are you actually giving feedback? So yeah, in future updates, I think I'm going to do that. Okay, Let me know what you guys think. This is a big update that's coming. I do think that there's some decent quality of life stuff here. However, I also would love for them to address, as my last little note, KVK, right? I just, my view on the zone openings, I think it is getting better. I like the idea of them having kind of more neutral fighting areas between the regions. That to me, I think makes some sense, and I kind of like that. However, I do hope it's something where you're eventually going to be able to go in that general direction of like zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and then zone 1. And right when I was about to end, there's the big one, right? Then zone 1 kind of opens up. And then maybe they just kind of focus more on having these like neutral fighting zones, very similar to what we saw in S1+, which I thought was such a fantastic creative way to do it. But again, I digress. We will see how things go. I think the home kingdom, the kind of home kingdom designation idea to me, it still seems like that's king over what's being done now. But you know, again, we will see how things play out. Okay, that is going to do it for me now. I'm officially over 30 minutes at almost 31. And yes, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. As always, that is it for me. Until next time, I will catch you later.